And there, ahead, all he could see, as wide as all the world, great, high, and unbelievably white in the sun, was the square top of Kilimanjaro. Hemingway, one of the lost generations. This is one of the words that generally refers to an alienation from traditional moral values. And of course, The Snows of Kilimanjaro is one of his most famous works. We're going to talk about it today. But first, let us just briefly summarize the points of the plot for those of you who haven't read the novel. In the beginning of the story, Harry was lying back on a cot, and he is dying. His leg was badly scratched with gangrene. Their cars have broken down. They're in the middle of the nowhere on African continent, and nobody is coming to save them. That's a pretty helpless situation. And Harry just lying there thinking about his death. Now what he first began to do is to scold his beautiful rich wife, Helen. He said to Helen that she is nothing to him, that he never loved her, that, quote, love is like a dunghill, and he is the cock that gets on it to crow. He said that the stink must bother, and she can shoot him if that pleases. Helen started to cry. What is Harry doing here? Now, a most direct answer could be that Harry is just complaining about their relationship. Helen was, even though that she was Harry's wife, we can see that they're on a very unequal basis in terms of financial equality. Because Harry, as you can observe, is a writer and he does not have any stable source of income. On the other hand, Helen is a very rich woman, and it is said that she has everything she wanted, or had everything she wanted. She had a husband, she had children, she had lots of money, she had every riches, every single wealth, and now she has Harry. We can already see that why Harry is complaining of this relationship at the end of his life and is trying to kill a lot of the things he's leaving behind. And another reason might seem quite obvious. Harry, as we may recall, is a writer. And now, all of these writings are rotting in his guts. He's never going to take them out ever again now that he is dying. He cannot pour these words on paper with his pen. So that's a very great regret, because as we will see, it is one of his greatest reasons of coming to his uncomfortable safari in Africa. Now, let's come back to the beginning of all of these, when Harry is dying. After he skipped into the lie and comforted Helen and said that he always loved her, he began to think of his very old times, episodes and episodes, with a lot of flashes going back into the past. It is just like cutting up your moments one by one. Let's just check them out, okay? Harry remembered when he was playing cards by the fire on a very snowy day. It was like blizzard outside. In a cot, not in a cot, like in a house near a pile of fire. When the soldier dragged in, everybody was surprised because his legs were so bloody, and he said that the cops were after him. Flashback ended. The second episode we can tell about was Harry was drinking in a bar in Paris and said he often gambles and lost all of his money. Similarly, we can also see that Harry is messing out with those drunkards, something that his wife would never bother doing because it's a contact with the lower classes. Another episode also reveals that his friend was dying. His bowels were out during a war, the bombs were exploding, and his insides were caught on the wires. A very great similarity we can see between these episodes is that they're quite bloody. They're quite violent, they're quite rustic. They're not something you will expect from one of those upper classes with those rich, stable life. It's a completely different thing. And as far as I can observe, they're both Harry's source of pain and literary creation. His best writings all derive from all of these painful, violent memories. However, he gave it up and traded it for comfort and security, and as we already saw, married Helen. Although he chose this life of stability, he felt really regretful because he cannot write any of those works he really wanted to write. Well, of course, it's also noteworthy that even before their marriage, he already traded his abilities and let them fade away during heavy drinking, because these memories are so painful that he have to drive them out by alcohol. So you see, he kind of deserved this kind of horrible experience during his life of comfort. But at the same time, he's a writer very serious about his work. So that is the reason why he tried to use this uncomfortable safari to find his older self, his rustic, used to violence, his older self, so that he can write again as a great author. Alas, all these sentiments aside, because now I'm going to talk about some of my own interpretations. My biggest feeling is that it is a story about choices, regret, and more importantly, fate. Harry had dodged death. He had tried to escape it all his life. But in the final corner, he simply fell down and had a bad luck because he forgot to treat his leg with iodine after a scratch during a walk in the forest. We can already see that he made all of these things to happen. So it doesn't have to be that way. This is going to bring a very curious point about fate in the later part, I should say, of my analysis. But let's just move on. This really reminds me a lot of other similar stories about fate, that some parts of these plot is just inevitable. It is ridiculous. It's a situational irony. It's like an inevitable irony of the character that they have to face, they have to pick up. And in this case, Harry have to face this accidental death. The story I'm going to relate this to is Oedipus Rex. Now, that is quite a famous play. I'm going to cap this up really quick. Oedipus was born in the city of Thebes, and his father and mother received a prophecy that one day he's going to kill his father and marry his mother. Obviously, the old king and his wife wanted to avoid the prophecy, so they threw Oedipus onto a hill, but he was saved by a shepherd and later reared in another kingdom. When Oedipus gets older, he tried to avoid the prophecy by departing his reared father. Nonetheless, fate still met him at the crucial corner because he still met his father, he killed him, returned to the city, and married his mother. You see, it's about that inevitability these writers are coming to discuss in these plays that made them all really matters. And this is actually a very interesting question. Did Hemingway get his source of inspiration from this? Did he also question the purpose of living? Because if fate is inevitable, why are we living anyways? That's the first question I want to throw to you guys. And second question is that really praiseworthy? Harry had dodged his death all his life. I mean, if he hadn't done this, he could probably have been a very great writer because of all of his experience. But that is something we will never get to know. And as we see, these great writers are seemingly trotting on each other's footsteps. And this is kind of refers back to the previous question of the lost generation, because Hemingway is kind of questioning the purpose of life and the concept of fate. It is really feeling very great. Now I'm asking the same questions as those previously great authors. We're walking on the same footsteps. But okay, I'm going to demonstrate what I said have a basis of truth, because Hemingway give a shockingly similar ending to that of Oedipus. Let's take a look at the final paragraphs. He evidently figured that they had the gas. And looking down, he saw a pink sifting cloud moving over the ground and in the air like the first snow in a blizzard that comes from nowhere, and he knew that the locusts were coming from the south. Then they began to climb, and they were going to the east, it seemed. And then it was darkened, and they were in a storm. The rain so thick it was like flying through a waterfall. And then they were out, and Compy turned his head and grinned and pointed there ahead. All he could see, as wide as all the world, great, high, and unbelievably white in the sun, was the square top of Kilimanjaro. What do you guys feel about this? When I'm first reading this really reminds me of heaven because it's such like a strikingly beautiful passage. I said it is like a similar ending to Oedipus at Colonus because he also found his resting place there and received a very benevolent ending, just as what Hemingway gave his protagonist Harry. How did both of these writers manage to give all of their protagonists such a similar but great ending? That is another very important question I wanted to discuss. Is fate after all a cruel master? Well, I know these are a lot of questions for you to ponder. Feel free to drop your comments below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.